Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Be Bold America. I'm your host, Jill Cody. Our program today is, what do the midterms mean for the long term on climate? So, that's why I tell you to keep your eyes open, to keep them wide open, at least on one side. Those of you who have small children or grandchildren might remember that from Dr. Seuss's I Can Read with My Eyes Shut children's book. So, keep at least one eye open and focus on the climate crisis these next 2 years. The House of Representatives will be Republican-controlled, and it is sad to say the grand old party has no interest in writing active policies to address the climate emergency. How will the midterm election results affect the long-term climate crisis? How will dinosaurs continue to block progress? There are big stakes involved, and we still have big things to do. We will also learn today about Green TV. Green TV is an online channel that picks up where the mainstream media leaves off, offering the public compelling science and solution-based programming in support of environmental sustainability, social justice, and spiritual wisdom, and the actions needed to further these goals. They bring real facts and real news to the everyday person. Our very special guest today is Betsy Rosenberg. Betsy is an award-winning national broadcast journalist who spent the first half of her career as a reporter and anchor with CBS Radio News Network. On Earth Day 1997, Betsy launched Trash Talk Minutes on KCBS Radio in San Francisco. Betsy has interviewed leading eco-innovators of our time from science, politics, business, tech, activism, and the arts, as she is a keen observer, writer, and speaker on how mainstream news outlets cover climate change and other environmental issues. She's written many articles and contributed to an anthology edited by me, entitled Climate Abandoned, We're on the Endangered Species List. Betsy is now the co-founder and chief content creator for Green TV. Welcome to Be Bold America, Betsy.
Thank you, Jill. So great to hear you. You are such a polished and professional radio star now. Remember when you called me a couple of years ago and said, should I do this? I said, yes. She said, can you help me? Can you help me be media savvy? I said, you don't need it. Just get in touch with your passion. You have all the knowledge. And I think you must have taken my advice.
I sure did. Right to my heart. I sure did. And it's now been, February, this coming February, we'll be going into our 5th year. So it'll be 4 complete years soon.
Wait, that was 5 years ago. Time flies. I thought it was a couple of years ago. Well, congratulations, even more so.
Thank you, Betsy. Well, how did we meet? I'm trying to remember. It was
through the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore's project.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
I was trained early, like January of 2007. I think I was
in your
6.
class.
Were you in my class?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right.
That's how we met.
That's where we met.
And we've been friends since 2007, touching bases through the years. So I just thought to give everyone sort of a start on the basics for the discussion we'll have, is just to share with us some of the current viewpoints of scientists have on the challenges of the climate crisis, just to give us a basis of what we're facing.
Good, bad, and good news. The good news is that, we'll get to the election in a minute. The good news is more people are waking up to smell the carbon, as I say. The bad news is because we're seeing more and more extreme weather events getting harder and harder to be, as you said, a dinosaur, one of my favorite coined terms, and glad it's on because it's really unbelievable. I'm sure that in late 2022, we still have people in office, supposed political leaders, who are denying, downplaying, diminishing, and deflecting, right, and delaying. But we can't ignore it anymore. I mean, those of us who have been trying to ignore it, but we're losing sleep for many, many years. But the general public, I think, is not able to say this, is a far-off problem, either, chronologically in terms of time and in terms of distance. So that is the good and the bad and the good, because the good news is finally it's becoming not the top issue it should be, but it's getting up there, certainly, and most importantly and most dramatically with young people. And they are the ones that helped prevent a red wave in this most recent midterms and helped create a green wave. I think we can call it that. It wasn't a green tsunami, but it was certainly more than a green ripple. And we can talk about that. We can talk about COP27. And hopefully someone will stop trying to call me and ding my phone. I hope that doesn't sound too loud at your end. Anyway, I'm here and ready to answer any questions. I just wanted to give you that broad overview. We're sort of in a moment of inflection, I'd say, in so many ways. Certainly, with politics being everything's on the line, but nothing more so than the one thing that we cannot continue to postpone, and that is to deal with our emissions. We are still creating more emissions than we should be, way more. And there's some good things that happen at COP and some disappointing things. We can jump right in there if you like.
Why don't you tell us what just happened at COP and what is COP?
COP is a conference of parties that's basically sponsored by the UN. This is COP number 27. So they started back, I think, in 1992, Rio de Janeiro, is my recollection. And there's been a lot of criticism of COPs that, first of all, what the Republicans love to say, all these people are flying in on their private jets to talk about emissions reductions, what a sham. But, of course, they have to meet in person to really have the best outcome. And that usually, and this was no exception, COP27, means there's a high expectations going in, and then right before the last minute, it seems like there's okay, we're going to downplay the expectations because I guess they have reason to think it's not going to be quite as, broad-reaching and game-changing as we know it needs to be. And sure enough, there was, disappointing news, nothing's happening. And once again, in the 11th hour, last time it was, President Barack Obama coming in and negotiating some progress, and this time it was not Barack Obama, but it was his climate czar, and that is John Kerry, Biden's climate czar, I should say. Kerry worked with the Obama administration, too, on climate. He is, of course, a longtime climate hawk. And unfortunately, he got COVID in the last 24 hours, but they still managed to get to a very important agreement, and that is finally to really hear and take in the cries from developing nations and island nations for loss and damage. And, of course, that's really reparations. They're saying, you in the developed world, and it's absolutely true, have created most of the emissions damage, and we are the ones who feel it first and worst. That is not okay. If you want us to leapfrog over using dirty energy, coal, oil, gas, you need to, help pay for the damage that we get with hurricanes, like, the ones we've seen recently, Maria, Ian, and also, to help us make this transition. And it's been kind of, kicked down the road, kicking the carbon can down the road a bit. And I think this is the time that developing nations representatives could no longer ignore that because you can't be credible, right, by ignoring that. It's just a reality. So they did agree to create a fund, U.S., EU, and other developed nations to help begin to provide the loss and damage funds that are needed. Now, no specifics on who's going to give what exactly or when, but it was good enough to end on a positive note. Of course, what did not happen is any commitment to phase out or even phase down greenhouse gas emissions at this point. So, again, a mixed bag there, but it was also kind of a strange place to have it, in the Egyptian desert at a resort, no less. And, of course, there was a lot of controversy about Coca-Cola being the primary sponsor, since they are not good players on the environmental front, have not been for a long time. So there was a lot of talk of greenwashing. I wasn't there, but I heard from my sources, I interviewed a couple of people that were there for Green TV, that the protesters were kept at a, quote, safe distance from the negotiations, and that's always disappointing. But they were still there. There was a much bigger showing of women and indigenous people, and that, of course, is much needed. But what really is not happening yet, there's really no women at the negotiating table, and that cannot be. We know that women are the nurturers, and I think we've given men a long shot at creating this world and maybe destroying it too. I say give women 10 years to run the corporations and the countries, and climate change will improve. I guarantee it.
Well, this past week, I guess they probably didn't have a chance to talk about it at COP, but this past week the planet went over 8 billion people. A big
That's right.
milestone. And no one's been wanting to talk about population growth as an issue with the climate crisis. But I was heartened to see when they were asking the question about is population a concern. And 55% of people interviewed said somewhat to very concerned, but that left 45% not concerned at all. What are your thoughts about the population as one of the key challenges of our climate emergency?
Well, there is someone who is very concerned about population. Unfortunately, it's Elon Musk, and he's saying we need to increase the population. Somehow our great green hope, the maker of Tesla, who made really electric cars sexy, is gone off the deep end, I'd say. And, we were hoping that he was really going to be our savior, with so many great green companies, solar and electric cars, of course. And I'm not sure about the tunnel thing, if that's a good or bad thing. We'll see. The rockets, of course, not so green. But he actually said that the biggest problem that we face is population is getting too low, and people should have a lot of children. And he has practiced what he's preaching. He's got 9 kids from, 3 or 4 different women. So I don't know what happened to him. But seriously, people are concerned about population in the other direction because, of course, that is the biggest thing you can do is have a child, the biggest impact on the planet. We used to have families with 4, 5, 6 kids. I know growing up, we lived next door to one family, had 5 children. The next door to them was 7 children. And we don't see that so much, so that's good news. But of course, it's good news because we are, of course, the biggest greenhouse gas emitters per capita in the United States. China, of course, being the overall biggest emitter of greenhouse gases. So we live high on the hog, as we know, and, other developing countries, they have higher population, but they have a much lower impact per person.
Well, I recently heard Carrie Swisher, I believe her name is, interviewed, and she's the leading tech blogger and knows all of these people. And she said about Elon Musk that she doesn't recognize the person she once knew at all right now, that he has really changed. And you sort of validated that by thinking when he really did a lot for the electric car. It's such a big innovative, and a real significant solution to emissions is the electric car, and yet here he's really the opposite now. So she said he just doesn't know this person anymore.
Well, I believe it. I never have had a chance to meet him, although he moved to Austin, and that's where I live now. So before he, got kind of crazy, I was trying to find out which bar he hangs out at. And I was going to ask him if he might want to fund green TV, which would be a really good investment because we are a platform that will be the tide we hope to lift all the green boats, meaning we cover all the environmental issues, especially climate. But now he'd probably say, he'd look at me like I was the crazy one. And, it's really too bad because we needed someone that brilliant. And I used to give him a lot of passes for being so eccentric because, when you're a genius, okay, he was just kind of strange. But now when he's saying vote Republican, obviously that is not good for the climate. When he's saying he's supporting Governor DeSantis, a climate denier, all but, and maybe you could say a denier. It was kind of awkward, wasn't it, when he was standing there next to President Biden after Hurricane Ian just destroyed his state, and, he was pretending to, appreciate Biden, which I'm sure he did, all the emergency funding. But if you asked him, what does he think of climate change, probably would have had to hem and haw because everything he has said and done shows he doesn't, quote, believe in it, which, of course, is ridiculous. And I would say since more than half of the voters in Florida voted for him, they don't either, and even including perhaps victims of Hurricane Ian and Maria. And that's where the education is needed, Jill, because people need to connect the dots. And if you understand that this is not your parents' weather, this is weather on steroids, and it's only going to get worse from here, you would absolutely insist and only consider voting for somebody who, A, gets science and also specifically climate science, because if you don't understand it or you pretend you don't understand it, it's really the same thing. I don't know what's worse, being ignorant or, just deliberately ignorant. They both are inexcusable, especially right now. That just shows you, right? And of course, the bad news in the election is my state, although I really don't relate to being a Texan. As you know, I'm a California girl.
Right.
But somehow we moved here 2018, and Elon Musk followed us. But part of the coastal invasion here, and I, volunteered for Beto when he was running for Senate and, governor, and the fact that he narrowly missed winning both times, and that's just so crazy and so painful given the need, especially with the need for gun control greater than ever in this state, especially with Uvalde shootings and then, abortion and climate change. Hello, it's really, really hot here unless it's really, really cold. Of course, last year we famously had Snowmageddon, and I was here, lived through that. Our pool turned into an ice skating rink, but quite seriously, hundreds died, and, within 24 hours of that happening, Abbott, it's hard to even call him a governor, really, it's so embarrassing. He blamed it on solar and wind power, which was, of course, hogwash. So
I remember
that's
that.
the bad news.
I remember
that's
that.
the bad news. And he is still governor. He's still my governor. Ted Cruz is still my senator. And DeSantis is still Florida's governor and appears to be the front runner for, running for president. I guess the good news is it's probably going to knock Trump off the map, but that's good. But DeSantis, in many ways, is not a whole lot better, other than he's, probably a little more, his personal values may be different. I think he's happily married.
Well, this is a good time to take a break. And after our break, I want to talk to you about Green TV. You are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7 FM. Many voices, one station. Listen globally online from the ksqd.org website. Our topic today is, what do the midterms mean for the long term on climate? And we're speaking with Betsy Rosenberg, who is an award-winning broadcast journalist and currently the co-founder and chief content creator with Green TV. Learn more at greentv.com, and you may reach Betsy on Twitter at Betsy_Rosenberg. I'm your host, Jill Cody.
Hello, K-Squid listeners. I'm Tom Hartman, and each weekday at 4 p.m., I bring you a different perspective on the news than you're likely to hear on most media outlets. Please join me on KSQD, Santa Cruz, your ink spot on the dial for the Tom Hartman program, heard now for the first time ever in the Monterey Bay area at 90.7 FM, weekdays at 4 p.m. That's progressive talking conversation with me, Tom Hartman, weekdays at 4 p.m. on KSQD 90.7 FM. Tag, you're it.
We're back, and we are speaking with our bold guest, Betsy Rosenberg. Want a friend to hear this interview? Be Bold America is available as a podcast. Now you and your friends may listen from your favorite podcast platform, such as Apple, Google, Spotify, Radio Public, and many more. And you may subscribe for free. Betsy, before the break, we were talking about Elon Musk's, and he just doesn't show any interest in the climate crisis, does he? He's sort of now become part of the problem, I think. Yeah. And then another person that's part of the problem is Rick Scott, speaking of millionaires and billionaires. Rick Scott's 11-point plan, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I wanted to get your take on what he said in this 11-point plan. Is a quote.
I did not hear that.
Well, just to give you some background, Mitch McConnell was asked if you take the Congress, what would the Republicans do? And he said, "I'll tell you after we're elected." We're not going to tell you before we're elected. But then Rick Scott came. I know. Yeah. Rick Scott came up with an 11-point plan to rescue America, and in it is just some unbelievable statements, one of which is every federal government needs to be validated every 5 years. Well, very sneakily, that means Social Security and Medicare. But one of the statements he said is, and I'll quote, "The weather is always changing. We take climate change seriously, but not hysterically. We will not adopt nutty policies that harm our economy or our jobs." Now, right, there's a lot to unpack there because I don't think they take climate change seriously, and they only refer to economy and jobs, not people and future and children and the planet. And so
they do? They all do that. They all do that, Jill. And inflation, they try to blame President Biden. Well, guess what? It has a lot to do with the pandemic and supply shortage and climate change, okay? And so if you connect the dots, and they never do, they don't want to do it, that way. They just want to blame, the administration that happens to be Democrats, and they are completely overlooking all the problems that are a result of climate change. And by the way, other environmental crises, because it's not just our atmosphere that's collapsing, our oceans are collapsing. We have a biodiversity crisis. We are in the sixth mass extinction. Really, if you look carefully, as some of us do, whether we want to or not, it's in my inbox every day, I'm sure yours too, it's really scary, bad news, and how half the country, at least, can conveniently ignore that. Do they really not know, do you think, or do they just somehow, it's all about short-term profits and their own pocketbook, and their kids and grandkids be damned. I can't believe this has been going on for too long, right? The fact that it's still happening after these hurricanes, as I call them, tornadoes where they shouldn't be, hurricanes, Superstorm Sandy in New York City. We just had the 10th anniversary of that. Wildfires, my old home, Northern California, that turn into infernos because there's 80-mile-an-hour winds. The derechos, whoever heard of that? It's the flooding. Hello. It's epic. It's biblical. And to ignore that and just talk about the economy, which, by the way, guess how much these disasters cost? Billions. It's really, it's mind-boggling to me that anyone can think these people who have blinders on could be leaders.
I know. Ron DeSantis in Florida, he's got in Miami, when the tide is up, he has fish swimming up the streets. How do you ignore something like that?
And that's sunny day flooding, I hear.
I know, it's sunny. It's sunny when that happens.
Funny.
I know.
Funny and not funny. Yeah, sunny, but not funny, right?
Well,
no, it's mind-boggling that state is going to go under first. It already is starting to happen. And yet they voted for Rick Scott, too many times, and now DeSantis. And what's wrong with people? I wish sometimes we could have a call-in show on Green TV as well as yours, just to get people's opinions on this, because it's gotten to the point where it's not only mind-boggling, it's mind-blowing to me. And maybe I just shouldn't be surprised, but if you're not surprised, you must be pretty cynical, and maybe I should be more cynical. But I just can't give up, because how can
oh, no, giving up plays right into their hands. There was a recent article, I dare to say, on the Fox News website, saying that the House is preparing to aggressively fight Biden's climate agenda. And just to read a comment here, get your input, that Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers, a Republican from Washington, the top Republican on the Energy and Commerce Committee, told Fox News Digital that right out of the gates in 2023, the Energy and Commerce Committee, Republicans, will be leading to reverse the damage of President Biden's energy crisis with solutions that unleash America's vast energy abundance and lower carbon emissions. How do you unleash vast energy abundance and have lower carbon emissions?
Well, you don't. They don't care about the carbon. They just care about the profits and drill, baby, drill. And, of course, you're talking about President Biden's, big victory for all of us, or as I say, only those who eat, breathe, or drink, is his climate bill, otherwise known as the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, some $370 billion in federal spending to tackle the crisis, and a lot of that's going to be, through tax credits, and a lot of that will be for developers and producers of clean electricity, exactly what should happen. And for anyone, especially a supposed leader, to say they're going to undo that, a lot of it is that infrastructure. It's just completely inexcusable. And, those Republicans who can't wait to go after Biden and his climate bill, shame. That's all I can say, shame. And to even think about Trump running again, who, I deliberately didn't watch his announcement, but I heard he was saying, sea level rise is just going to be a couple of inches over the next century. Wrong. And, emissions are lower than ever. Wrong. It's shameful. I guess I'm having a hard time coming up with new words.
I know. I guess just examples. For example, there was a study where by 2048, if we don't change things with the ocean, there won't be any more fish. I mean, it's warming so much that the fish are having trouble. They're oxygen-deprived areas of the ocean. And for us, we look out there, and it looks like it has always looked, but underneath,
exactly.
underneath, they're dire things.
Their shells.
Yes.
Yeah, the mollusks, because of, the carbon-causing acidity. I mean,
right, they can't make their shell. They can't harden their shells, right.
Right, exactly. And if you don't care about conservation or climate change, be selfish about shellfish. If you want to eat more lobster and crab, you should preserve them so you can. I'm making light of it, but what about that is okay? That there's not going to be any more fish in the sea, and we can't get any more alarming or louder. And poor Antonio Guterres, code red for humanity. We're on the highway to climate hell. The oil companies are feasting on the planet, while it burns. He's running out of things to say that could be more alarming, one after the next. And it is that alarming. And how come it seems so many people are able to tune it out? And so many of us maybe wish we could sometimes, but when you know too much, it's not really an option. And of course, more people need to know more.
Well, I think the product of doubt has been extremely successful because if I remember correctly, and maybe you can confirm this, is that even the phrase climate change came from the fossil fuel industry because it was less threatening. The climate always changes, right? Don't call it climate crisis or emergency or global warming, but climate change. And so even Democrats take that language now, and people that are in the field talk about climate change, and words matter. That's why I remember Greta Thunberg saying, it's a climate emergency, it's a climate crisis, it's already changed.
Right. I even use climate collapse because our atmosphere, that layer is collapsing on the way. Exactly. If we continue with business as usual. And you're right, global warming was seen even by, environmental activists later in retrospect as being a little too benign sounding, right? Oh, a little bit of warming's not bad. So then they changed it to climate change, but of course that doesn't do it. Really, climate action, climate emergency, climate collapse, I think are words we should be using now.
Right. Well, let me take a break right now because after the break, I wanted to talk about the midterms, and I kind of see the results of the glass half full and half empty at the same time. You're listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7 FM. Many voices, one station. Listen globally online from the ksqd.org website. Would you like to be added to our news group and get advance notice of our upcoming interviews? If so, please text Be Bold America at 22828. Text Be Bold America at 22828. We love to see those new names signing up, so thank you if you have. Our topic is, what do the midterms mean for the long term on climate? And we're speaking with Betsy Rosenberg, who is a keen observer, writer, and speaker on how mainstream news outlets cover climate change and other environmental issues. We'll be back with our bold guest, Betsy Rosenberg, right after the Hightower commentary titled Lessons from the Midterm Elections.
What hit the Republican Party on Election Day was, the Republican Party. Blow number one, of course, was from the party's president and cult boss, Donald Trump, who wields his narcissism like a political bludgeon. But then, Republicans got an even more damaging gut punch from the party's own Supreme Court majority of 6 partisan hacks. They chose this election year to assert their personal ideological view that the government should control every woman's birth decisions. Not popular. Then, like a karate chop to the party's own neck, its congressional leaders let loose with a pre-election announcement that, if put in charge, the grand old party would go after people's Social Security and Medicare benefits. But Republicans also got hit with something beyond their control. A bevy of new, unabashedly progressive Democratic candidates running on real populist issues that matter to workaday people, backed up by legions of energized grassroots activists. Candidates like Summer Lee, who will be the first black woman elected to Congress from Pennsylvania, championed by Working Families Party, Our Revolution, and other little d Democratic groups. She beat back concerted attempts by corporate powers in both major parties that tried to demonize and defeat her, including a last-minute dump of $1 million into her GOP opponent's campaign by the American-Israeli Super PAC. Another is Lena Hidalgo, the feisty people's advocate who is the top county official in Houston, Texas. She faced down a pack of ultra-rich oil magnates, developers, and other corporate interests who put up $9 million in a failed effort to boot her. This is Jim Hightower saying grassroots progressives showed in this election a promising path to democratic rejuvenation. Run aggressive campaigns offering real change from the business-as-usual politics of both parties. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back. Our topic is, what do the midterms mean for the long term on climate? And we're speaking with Betsy Rosenberg, co-founder and chief content creator for Green TV. Visit greentv.com. And Betsy, I just wanted to say, I've got a frog in my throat. It started coming out when I was reading last, because we had a huge event last night. KSQD is doing a signal expansion project, and our fundraising goal is $400,000, and we have raised $310,000. And we had a big event last night with Lacey J. Dalton, and it was a silent auction and concert and dancing, and I did a lot of yelling and screaming and talking.
No, you, Jill, you got something to say?
I celebrated, and I think we may have raised, I don't know, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 for that one night. So it won't be long before KSQD will be buying 2 more licenses and expanding our area to a huge segment of the California coast. So,
well, considering you are progressive radio, I am very happy to hear that. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I just wanted to say why the frog, I get that sound.
I don't hear a frog.
Oh, you don't hear a frog? Oh, good. Okay.
No, you sound great.
Oh, goody. So I was going to talk about, the midterms, about the glass half full and half empty. And I think it's the half empty part that affects what we're talking about with the long-term effect on climate, with the midterms mean for the long term. But the half full, to start with the good news, is that the results were far better than we expected. Democracy held. And there have been many alarmists over the years that have been talking about our losing the democracy. And it's obviously risen to the top where Biden felt that he needed to give a speech a few weeks ago. The scales are tipping, and I think it's paying off. So people are now really realizing you have to have democracy first before you can do anything about the climate crisis. Over to you.
Exactly. And President Barack Obama coming out with some really strong speeches on that topic, I think really helped as well. And I heard one of the Democratic analysts on CNN or MSNBC criticizing the Democrats for, talking about democracy. That's too convoluted. That's more than voters really want to deal with. It's all about inflation. And she really was afraid that was going to really lead to the red wave. And that turned out to not be the case. I think you got to give Americans the benefit of the doubt, at least half of America, that we can this concept of democracy. It's not too distant, my goodness, and we have seen what's happened. It's been eroded, and I think we've gotten enough warnings that things can change rapidly and can go in the wrong direction quite quickly.
Well, I'm feeling encouraged by the momentum, and I hope we can keep it up for the next 2 years. The Democrats start from behind right out of the gate because of gerrymandering, and I think we just lose at least 5 or more seats right from the start before a campaign even gets going because of the way the maps maps have been drawn. So we need to come out, significantly more. But Trump didn't do well, and we've got Senator Fetterman now, and Carrie Lake didn't win, and yes, and the 18 to 29-year-olds really came out and voted, and I sincerely hope that they continue because it is their future. Women came out because of the Dobbs decision, and we also had some really remarkable firsts. There's a first of African American governor in Maryland, Wes Moore, the first Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, the first Muslim Georgia state representative, Ruwan Rahman, I guess his name, and the first Muslim state, Texas state representative. So we've got
There's another one.
Yes.
Another one. Maxwell Alejandro Frost, the 25-year-old community organizer from the Orlando, Florida area.
Our first Gen Z.
Member of Generation Z elected to Congress, and he said the climate was absolutely a big part of the motivation for him to run. And I saw him interviewed. He is smart.
He is very smart.
So impressive.
And Dr. Ruth Ben Guyot, she has a Substack group called Lucid, and she mentioned something too, and I think it's important to relate today because of what happened last night in Colorado. She was talking about the rainbow wave. The rainbow wave of victories of LGBTQ candidates who ran for office in record numbers, she said, deserves to be mentioned at a time of rising anti-LGBTQ sentiments, which in Florida and elsewhere have been codified into law. The act of running for office, regardless of the result, sends a message that LGBTQ community will not be silenced or made invisible.
I can't. There's almost no words to talk about these kinds of shootings that are aimed at minority groups. Whether it's your gender, your preference, or anti-Semitism also on the rise. And I really blame Trump and those kind of Republicans for in a big way for stirring up hate that was sadly, shockingly already there, but for making it worse and for almost giving license to these people. I mean, several of the shootings, they were MAGA people. And, that's the other thing. By the way, young people care most about gun control, as they should, and the climate crisis, because they're the issues that are going to hit them most. It's understandable that abortion wouldn't be top of mind for them. It is understandable that it would be top of mind for women, at the very least. And it also, makes sense that they organize Next Gen, that's Tom Steyer's group. They really went on campuses and organized the young people to vote, and that really made a big difference. They apparently mobilized some 9.6 million voters for the midterms, and they were on college campuses and talking to everybody. They said they even had a presence on dating apps. Because if someone said, "What's more sexy than climate change?" Funny to have a light note there, but it really did make a difference. And Tom Steyer's been talking about mobilizing young voters for years, much to my frustration. Not that I'm against that noble goal and important, clearly, but I said, when are we going to educate people, Tom? He used all his millions to run, and what we could have done with Green TV or, media outreach and connecting the dots. So I do think that's the missing piece. We don't have to talk about that now, but maybe before the end of the hour. And but it is paying off now, I'm happy to say, 10 years after he really started putting millions into getting the vote out for people who are more progressive.
Well, talking
and
about
young people tend to be.
Yeah, talking about billionaires, one of the facts I heard recently was that $17 billion of dark money was spent on this midterm election by top 25 billionaire donors. There's the top 25, 18 of which were Republicans. So there's a lot of inequality in the country, and there's inequality of the dark money spending, and of course, dark money in the first place is a serious problem. But our Supreme Court, made it illegal to bribe politicians. So this is what we're living under.
Campaign finance.
There's no reform. Yeah, there's no campaign.
No. What's that? The Republicans don't even have any. Citizens United is what I'm trying to remember.
Oh yeah. Well, and there was Buckley versus Vallejo, and I think it was McPherson versus the SEC. I mean, there have been a lot of steps since the 1970s that have given people with money and corporations with money more speech because of that. Whoever has the most money has the most speech is basically what it's come down to. But I want to talk about the glass half empty as well, because I think we need to celebrate how really that this was remarkable that there was as many people came out at midterms that do in a presidential election. So I'm very encouraged by democracy and people realizing it's an issue. But the half empty part is, the Republicans ran on inflation, crime, immigration, but we'll see no legislation on that. There'll be no legislation to address inflation. There'll be no legislation to address crime or immigration. It's going to be chaos. I think chaos is coming. And what I can see is it's going to be retaliation versus legislation.
They've already started. They didn't waste 24 hours. They were talking about going after Hunter Biden, for crying out loud.
Yes.
Like there's no real problems in the world. That's the problem with Republicans. They create, quote, crises that are not problems, not major problems, and not certainly the fault of the president, like as if President Biden can control gas prices worldwide. It's so ridiculous and short-sighted. But they did not waste a minute to say they were going after the Bidens, the whole family, Hunter and President Biden and Kevin McCarthy. That's unfortunate. It got my blood boiling, I have to say. Like, can't you even show decency? And what about, having a safer planet and clean air and clean water and a stable, reliable climate so we can grow crops, and mostly in African countries where they're, having severe drought and famine now because of climate change. Like that's what gets me so angry. Like, you may be sitting in your house with your air conditioning blasting, Kevin McCarthy, but Mitch McConnell et al. But what about people who are starving right now, and people who were killed, in these hurricanes? And when the TV crews leave, Fort Myers, Sanibel Island, they were just flattened, and there's so many other communities. These people are probably just coming out of shock right about now, okay? Their whole lives have been upended, and in addition to people who lost their lives. And that's where I just get so outraged that there's just no compassion, there's no empathy, there's no connecting of the dots. Sorry, I went on a little bit of a rant there.
Well, that's okay. I often do that myself. Rant.
Well, you know what?
Misery loves company.
It's called for. It's called for. I had to get that out because I was in my car and I purposely decided not to watch the election returns. I care too much, and then Trump announcing didn't want to see that. He's taken up enough free rent in my brain, and try to tune him out. Hopefully, we won't have to much longer. But I had CNN on in my car, and it sort of snuck up on me, and I just heard these, proclamations to go after the Bidens, go after the Bidens. What about country? What about patriotism? And they're the Patriot Party, right? Over party, and they didn't waste a minute. It's just, it's.
Well, what I worry about...
It's criminal. I say it's criminal. That's what I say.
What I'm concerned about is that we're going to have 2 more years of emotional abuse on the American psyche. And I want people to be able to see it for what it will be and be able to withstand it so that we can again vote in 2024 for the climate, for democracy, for, not just... I worry if people are beaten down emotionally so much about all the, very difficult challenges we have with the climate crisis, but also being retaliated against, and all the oxygen in the room and the airwaves is taken up with, impeaching cabinet members and impeaching Biden and looking and investigating, investigating the January 6th committee and. Investigating the jailing of insurrectionists, investigating vaccines, and Trump isn't going to go away, and the government they'll close and shut down the government so they can get something out of with Social Security and Medicare. You don't know what they're going to do. They're perfectly happy to shut down the government, and I also find what's very frustrating is. These people run to be part of the government so that they can destroy the government. Using democracy against itself.
There should be another word. It goes way beyond hypocrisy. And all those things you mentioned, it's just a sideshow. It's just a distraction.
It's performance art.
Problems.
That's what I call it. Yeah. It's performance art. And the important thing is to look at what they're not doing. They're not solving any problems. They're not solving problems with inflation or crime or immigration. And Tom Hartman, the #1 progressive talk show host, said, show me one piece of legislation that the Republican Party has thought of, drafted, got through Congress, and signed that benefited the people of the country. One piece of legislation.
What is their platform? What is their platform? Impeach the president, inflation, crime. Inflation and crime and immigration, unfortunately, are long-term problems, and they are important. But if we don't solve the climate crisis or slow it down anyway, none of that's going to matter. Like one of these issues matters right now and needs everyone's attention right now, and no obstacles. It's going to be hard enough to do what we've got to do: cut our emissions in half by 2030. That's 7 years away, and we haven't turned the corner yet. So even without the fossil fuel industry just completely distracting and blowing smoke and just slowing down progress, and then their counterparts in the government that would just like to go along with the status quo. Fossil fuels are fine. It's so wrong. It's just so wrong because there is such a thing, as President Obama said, as too late, and we're pretty much almost there.
Well, and I wanted to, not to be depressing again, but we've been hearing the phrase, well, in 10 years, there's be a tipping point. 10 years, we've got this, that. Well, we lost 4 under Trump, and then we had a couple where we got the climate, not as much as we'd like, but a good climate fighting package. Now we're going to lose 2 more years with the Republican Congress, and I don't want people to give up, but losing 6 years out of that 10-year period, I'm concerned what the impact, this is the midterm impact on the long term of the climate crisis, is we're losing 2 more years. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've already lost 2 decades, really, 3, with all these factors that I've mentioned, the Republicans, right-wingers, fossil fuel industry, oil companies, they've been very successful in casting doubt, sowing doubt and confusion among the voters, right? I mean, up until recently, the news networks would have both sides on, which is ridiculous on its face. And they were successful at one thing. Well, they're successful at too many things, those who want to oppose action on climate. And that is politicizing it, making it a political issue when, of course, it's a physics issue. There's nothing political about it. It affects everybody, or again, everyone only those who eat, breathe, or drink, right? Who have, a kid or a grandchild. Come on. And so they have, so many news networks and outlets and people just don't want to talk about it. It's too political, you can't bring it up because it's too political. Well, it's not political. It shouldn't have been. And one party absolutely politicized it. So that is a big problem because we've lost so many years. But the latest polling, if we want to be positive here for a second, 58% of voters in the U.S. would prefer to vote for political candidates who support action to combat climate change, and only 17% want candidates who oppose action. And that's from polling that was conducted in April and May of this year. And most of that 17% is in the GOP, which I guess stands for Green Opposition Party.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Betsy Rosenberg, who is an award-winning broadcast journalist and currently the co-founder and chief content creator with Green TV. Learn more at greentv.com. I'm your host, Jill Cody.
KSQD now offers an exciting lineup of talk programs for your morning listening, whether you're listening at home or on commute. You'll hear local and fresh perspectives each weekday from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Start off at 6 with our locally produced Talk of the Bay, Be Bold America, and Sustainability Now. At 7, open your ears to award-winning programs The Laura Flanders Show, Climate One, The Kitchen Sisters, and Reveal. You can also hear Democracy Now! Every morning at 8, and the live call-in show Your Call every morning at 10. For the complete schedule or to listen online, visit ksqd.org. K-Squid, many voices, one station.
You're listening to Be Bold America, and we're speaking with Betsy Rosenberg, award-winning broadcast journalist. So, Betsy, just to wrap up the last, rant that we did, I just want people to be prepared for the performance art. That's what I call it, the performance art, because and we talked about culture wars, but I really think it's now become information warfare. Just for power's sake, they're not going to govern. They're not going to legislate. They're going to, as I said before, it's retaliation versus legislation. They're just going to retaliate, and I don't think any of them have the skills to govern, or write
Apparently
legislation. No, so we're going to have to realize that there's going to be information warfare out there that's just going to fill the airwaves to cause overwhelm and grievance and victimhood, and we just need to be ready for these 2 years. Former Representative Denver Riggleman said it's going to be horrific what is to come the next 2 years. So we just need to be prepared and not let it get us down and think, democracy doesn't work, because I think these midterms shows it does work. But we need to do more.
Yes, and another hopeful note, and that is that, the Republican Party is having an identity crisis, as they should be, right? And so if they're not going to, make Trump their savior, who is going to be, and what do they stand for? And that reckoning is what we've long wanted, right? Like, just when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump, when they were having those debates, I just so wanted her to say, and Donald, what do you think of climate change? What are your plans? What kind of policies? It would have put him on the spot. He would have, tried to wiggle out of it. He'd say something stupid, or some things stupid, as he always does on climate, and that could have made a difference in that very close election, And so the Republicans have to face the music, and now they're saying, oh, yeah, we know it's real and it's cyclical and all that, which, of course, is ridiculous. Look at the hockey stick. Thank you, Michael Mann. But to not stand for anything and to ignore climate, that's not a winning platform, and I don't think they can win on it. So if they want to keep losing, do more of the same, right? And if you want more of the same, in terms of climate disasters, vote Republican, because there's very few of them who get it and who are, out front and leading on climate. And when you say performance art, I want to say, Well, that's giving them too much credit, being artists. But they are actors. They're actors because they're pretending they're stupid, and maybe they are. But either way, like I said, ignorance or denial. I don't know what's worse. But let's hope that that the day has come where the Republicans have to take a good hard look at themselves and say, if we want to, keep. That's why these midterms are so hopeful. That the people that Trump handpicked are all election deniers, pretty much all lost. And so let's get rid of that. Then let's attack climate denial, because that's just as important.
You raised something that I did want to mention, that the election deniers that were running for Secretary of States that would be in control of our elections, they lost. However, there are about 100 more that got voted into the House of Representatives. So Lauren Boebert, by 500 votes, got back into the House of Representatives. Marjorie Taylor Greene back. They're going to be joined by 100 more. So this is what I'm saying is about being prepared, is that Kevin McCarthy is going to have a nightmare to run with the numbers of people that are not only election deniers, but aren't examples of leadership, professionalism, or ethics. I mean, there's just...
Say that again.
Yeah.
Yep. And every time they've looked into voter fraud, it's shown conclusively there is no such thing.
Oh, there's no such thing. No, there's no such thing.
Let's again create a crisis that's not real and ignore the most real, threatening issue that humanity has ever faced. Okay?
Create a crisis.
What about that is something you want to vote for?
Yeah. Create a crisis and then make people scared of it, and it's not a non-issue. Like critical race theory. That's, I'm going to digress here again. But critical race theory, Youngkin, I guess, the governor, when he ran 2 years ago to be governor of Virginia, said, I'm going to make sure critical race theory isn't in our schools, our elementary schools and our high schools. Well, it wasn't in those schools. So how can you get out of something that wasn't there, but it infers that it was there in the first place and scares people? Anyway, I just wanted to wrap that up saying that the information warfare is going to increase, the hate is going to metastasize, the retaliation and revenge is going to be, I think, nearly intolerable. And if people are afraid, ready for it and see them as perform as artists, then they may not take it as seriously, that it's just something that will help us in the 2024 election, because we need that help for the climate crisis, for the future. There's so much more we must do.
Oh, and I can't believe we've gone almost an hour and I haven't brought up Fox yet, because that is a big part of the problem. The echo chamber, liars, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, still to this day, lying about climate change, getting away with murder. People were up in arms when they realized that they were lying about COVID. Some people were, intelligent, educated people were putting masks on and getting vaccines. But they've been lying about climate, and more people have and will die from climate change. Why is it not okay? None of it's okay. But what about lying about climate? Has not really been dealt with, and they're getting paid tens of millions of dollars, the big stars, and that's encouraging them to mislead, disinform their public, which unfortunately their viewers and radio audience too are huge. It's the number one network, which is again shocking, and they're getting away with murder and theft, because they're stealing our children's future. And why do I say murder? Because people who don't understand that climate change is a whole other animal might not evacuate in time if the fire is coming across the valley, and they don't realize it's going to come faster, sooner, bigger, badder, right? And same thing with flooding. People don't leave their homes because in the past it was fine. They wrote it out. And the signature thing when all these people are interviewed who are victims who survived these floods and fires say, we've never seen anything like this.
So Betsy,
nothing like we've seen before.
In the last 2 minutes of our show here, what can listeners keep doing, stop doing, and start doing?
Thank you for asking.
Yes.
Stopping me going on about Fox, I take you into the next hour. You'd have to hang up on me. Okay, well, first of all, these are my 4 C's. Keep conserving, caring, composting, and perhaps most important, cast your ballots. And by that I mean pay attention to the elections, all of them, including the midterms, including local, regional, and of course national. Start watching Green TV, greentv.com. Why? Don't worry, we're all volunteers. I'm not getting paid to say this or even to do it. 25 years of voluntary service because I know too much to quit. And we have a very experienced, eco-savvy team that is bringing the best curated solutionaries to the fore. I do a series called Meet the Solutionaries, and we need to get up to 1,000 subscribers. We're about halfway there. So please go to our YouTube channel, greentv.com. There's a green.tv. That's not us. We're green.tv, the original. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. It won't cost you a thing. There's no spam. You'll just get alerted when I post an interview or two each week with the curated best minds I can find who have the best solutions, and then we can start live streaming when we hit 1,000 viewers according to YouTube. So if every one of your listeners did that today, we might get there really soon. And I have so many stories I want to get on, and that would make a big difference, game changer. And then stop. I guess probably don't have much time, so I'll just say in a word, stop wasting. Stop wasting energy, food, water, time.
Yes. Well, Betsy, I'm so grateful to speak with you today. I wanted to add, too, that this is just an opportunity these next 2 years to go within and find how you can be calm and look at beauty and take care of yourself, and because there's going to be a lot of attacks on the American psyche. But I want to thank you so much for coming on Be Bold America today. And
Jill, thank you for having me. Thank you for being such a great host. Thank you for believing me when I said it's not rocket science, hosting a radio show. Just get in touch with your passion and what you know, and you've done that beautifully. So
well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Aren't you
and
sweet?
On your expansion as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being our bold and impressive guest today.
Unlike the Republicans, I don't lie.
Remember, you can learn more. Visit greentv.com. What's next on Be Bold America on December 4th at 5 p.m. will be Natural Consequences, Intimate Essays for a Planet in Peril. We will be speaking with Char Miller, the W.M. Keck Professor of Environmental Analysis and History at Pomona College, about his collection of short essays, opinion pieces, and wandering words asking excellent questions that may or may not have answers. But his ability to write about the odd intersections of life, law, and the world around us is plain fun to read, whether he's exploring the problems of wildfires or the arcane minutiae of water management. Yet every piece he writes has a way of bringing good cheer and upbeat attitude. After all, the first step to solving a problem is identifying it. So join us for Natural Consequences, Intimate Essays for a Planet in Peril on Be Bold America, December 4th at 5 p.m. Remember, Be Bold America is available as a podcast. Now you may listen to the show anytime for free. I want to give a special thank you to Be Bold America's program engineer, Eliza James, and our station program director, Howard Feldstein. You're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, many voices, one station. Listen worldwide online at ksqd.org. Stay tuned for Reflections on Buddhism with the Venerable Tenzin. My name is Jill Cody, and thank you for listening to Be Bold America. Until next time, keep, stop, start.